It doesn't matter what it is, but it definitely applies to screenwriting. If you're wanting to get better at anything, a sport, a skill, a craft, you have two options. You can do it without focus and you will eventually get there, or you can practice specific skills in a specific way that focuses your learning and you'll arrive where you want to arrive exponentially faster. But if you want to focus, it's going to cost you. It's going to cost you time for sure, and more than likely some money. There's no way around it if you're wanting to get there faster. If speed isn't an issue, then keep doing what you're doing. But if you're done taking your time and you're ready to find success in anything, especially screenwriting, it's time to focus. There are two types of people who want to be screenwriters. One type is the person who is in no hurry. You have a job, you have a life. Screenwriting is a hobby. It's a fun hobby and one you love. And if you got the chance to get something made, of course, you would jump at it. But you're in this because it's a hobby. And if this is you, and more importantly, if you have no intention of moving faster than you are, then honestly, this video may not be the best one for you. Instead, go watch this one. But the other person who wants to be a screenwriter isn't doing it because it's a hobby. You're doing it because it's a passion, a deep, deep passion. You love the craft. You love movies and TV. You want your words, your ideas, and your stories to be filmed and made for people to experience what you have imagined and written. You may not even have specific stories that you're passionate about, but you love the craft so much that you just want to write. It doesn't matter what you write, not to you. You can find something you love about anything. You just want to be hired to write. And people who are passionate about the craft want to either shoot their own stuff or get paid to write somebody else's stuff, regardless of what it is. But you realize right now that you are still learning. You've written some stuff, you know you love it, you love the craft, you want to keep doing it, but you know you are here, and the stuff you want to do means you have to be over here, okay, on the skill level scale. So how do you get from here to here? And the answer in very broad terms is focus. And I'm going to give you some principles to follow. Yes, I have resources that can help you, but whether you use my resources or not, if you aren't incorporating these principles into your passion of screenwriting or whatever skill or craft you're wanting to learn and improve, okay, you might as well just be a hobbyist. In fact, I'd argue if you aren't doing these things to improve in the craft, then you aren't really passionate about the craft. You're really just a hobbyist. And I'm sorry to be like that, but if you aren't fully passionate about it, you won't find the success that you're looking for. There's too many passionate people behind you who will capitalize on the opportunities that you could have. Okay, 5 principles, and I've put them in an acronym, and I know acronyms aren't for everybody, so bear with me if they're not your thing, but I'm using it because for some people, it's helpful. And since we're talking about focus, that's the acronym, FOCUS. And that's actually the first principle, focus, because it's the overriding thing of the whole thing. If you miss this, it doesn't matter if you get the other 4. You aren't going to get to where you want to get to. And what focus is, well, focusing on is intentionality. Your focus, your intentionality. It's what drives everything. You aren't just doing stuff to do it. You are intentionally doing something to grow a skill or grow a habit. If you've played sports, this is why you do practice. This is why professional athletes still go to practice. It's why NBA players shoot free throws after practice. It's why football and soccer players run sprints. It's why the basics are focused on all the time. Professionals know that you never arrive. As a result, you can't just wing it. You have to be intentional. So ask yourself, what is not going like you want it to go? What should you be focusing on? Some of you may know that I referee soccer, but every single time I referee, I think about one thing to improve upon during that match. What's one thing I can do better this match? What's one thing I can work on? I can always do better as a referee. I never get it right. No referee in any sport ever gets it right exactly all the time. It just doesn't happen. And screenwriting is no different. You never arrive. You can always learn, always improve in the craft, always work on things you want to improve upon, and you have to cultivate this habit of focus. So you can't just, work on screenwriting. Okay, that's not how it works. You have to be specific and focused with some intentionality and something to improve. Maybe it's dialogue, maybe it's description, maybe it's specific types of scenes, maybe it's finding your voice, maybe it's figuring out log lines and marketable ideas, maybe it's honing your planning process or figuring out how to be more efficient over the entire writing process, or a host of other things. It doesn't matter. You have to pick one and focus on that. Work it, hone it, and then move to the next one. And working through elements in this way will actually make you move faster through the learning experience and get you where you want to be much faster than you could just kind of randomly doing it. But then comes the O. The outcome must be measurable. And this one is hard to do at first. I wish it wasn't, but it is. In part, if you don't know how to write good dialogue, okay, you're like, I need to learn how to write better dialogue, but you don't know how to write good dialogue. How can you determine what a measurable outcome is for writing dialogue? I realize the conundrum, but let's back up a second. I talk a lot about what a story is. Someone who wants something badly, having trouble getting it, they get it or they don't. That's what a story is. That thing your character is after, it must be measurable in a story. That's what makes any story work. But learning works the same way. In other words, what would an A be in the dialogue course? If you were taking a class on dialogue, what would you have to do to get an A? Now, maybe that means that you can write a scene, cover up the names of the characters speaking, and still know who's talking. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe you just want to learn how to avoid writing Q&A scenes, which are super boring in a screenplay, and you want to try to avoid those. Or maybe you just want to learn how to write jokes in a more concise manner, like one-liners or whatever. It doesn't matter, but you need a measurable outcome. This helps you to refine your focus, and it will let you know if you've arrived or not, or if you need to keep working on it. And maybe what that means is you need to do some preliminary studying on the topic to learn enough about it to figure out a specific outcome. But if you want to get better, you have to have a measurable outcome, a destination to focus on. And then comes the C, commit to the time it's going to take you to reach the goal. Now, it will not happen overnight. In fact, let me put some things in perspective for you. Most people who want to be a screenwriter, from the time they decide that they want to be a screenwriter to the time they begin to find success that they're looking for, it takes them about 10 to 15 years of focused effort. And this is important for you to hear. That's focused effort, not just, trying to figure it out on your own effort. Okay, if you do that, it could easily take you longer. Now, it might not, and there's a lot of factors here, but on average, that's the time. So if you accept that it might take you 10 to 15 years, if you just for the next 6 months, I'm going to focus on understanding what a story really is and the pieces involved and what makes a good one or a bad one, okay, that's just a drop in the bucket. But how much further down the road will you be if 6 months from now, you know the difference between story and storytelling, and you know what makes a good story and what doesn't, and how to identify what good stories are and which ones are not, and more importantly, how to include the pieces of a good story to make sure that yours is a good one. You'd be so much further down the road than someone who's just, I'm just going to read screenplays and watch stuff and it'll sink in eventually. Well, yeah, of course it will. But you will have left them in the dust so far behind you because you focused and committed to the time. Now, most of you can probably get behind those first three. Those generally make sense. The last two, well, yeah, most people who are learning intentionally avoid the fourth one and they just flat out ignore the fifth one. Now, to be fair, you have probably never considered the fifth one, the last one, as it relates to screenwriting, even though if you've done any kind of formal education, you know it's important. I'll come back to it though. First, let's deal with the U, and this is the one that most of you skip, or at minimum, think you can do better on your own. And a lot of you fall victim to many who have been doing screenwriting professionally for a while, and they say things like, I learned it on my own, you can too. And you know what? They are right about their experience. They did learn it on their own, but they had to. When I was first learning screenwriting, there were literally 6 screenwriting books. 6. YouTube didn't exist. The internet didn't exist. Pagers were like the super cool new tech. So of course people learned it on their own. They had to, and it took them a long time to learn and to break in. But now there's a lot out there. The downside, of course, is there's so much out there that it's hard to sift through the noise. So let me help you out just a little bit. Every single resource out there, every single one, has some useful information. It's going to be helpful to you in some way. Now, some are more useful and beneficial than others. Some you need to be familiar with, even though you should probably ignore most of the information just because industry people are familiar with it, and then you need to know what they're talking about. So the U in focus, utilize resources. YouTube is one, absolutely. You can learn some things here. That's absolutely true. I hope that you're learning from my videos. I try to make sure that I'm including helpful resources and knowledge for you all along the way. But remember the focus you have to have. The intentionality, having a planned outcome, the committing to the time. YouTube is great for quick answers, for some motivation, for some tips and tricks and hacks, and even some things to consider, but it does not replace the focus. If you want to learn about story structure, then you've got to focus and learn about story structure. One YouTube video isn't going to cut it. It will help you get started. It might give you some context and lay some groundwork, but you need more focus and you need more focused resources. And I told you earlier that if you really want to progress quickly in the craft, it's going to cost you some time and it's going to cost you some money. And this is the one that costs money. You set your budget, don't be irresponsible with your money, but you're going to probably pay for some software at minimum. And then there are books and online classes, script consultations, or services or contests where you get feedback. And you can learn a lot from those things, especially if they're getting good feedback for you. And there's a lot of stuff. There's even some screenwriting coaches out there. Maybe you want to go to film school and focus on a whole other level. You can do all of those things. Now, can you get there on your own with books and relatively low-cost resources? Well, yeah, of course you can. And there's a lot of resources out there. But if you're just grazing the resources, you aren't going to learn at the speed you're wanting to learn at. Have some intention and utilize the resources available to you in intentional ways. And yes, I have resources ranging from free to not free, and I'll mention one in a second, but we've got one more thing to do to make you move faster in learning the craft, one more piece of focus, and that's the one that most people don't even realize that they need to be doing, and it's this: self-reflection. And you might think, okay, so Jake, you want me to sit and think about stuff? Just sit and think? And yes and no. I do want you to think about stuff, but again, with focus, to be intentional. You set out to learn something specific, the O of focus, the outcome that you had planned. Have you learned it? How have you improved? Have you compared the things that you wrote recently with things you wrote a while ago and noted a difference? I mean, what can you do better? What are you doing better? Now you need to reflect on that. And all effective learning includes self-reflection. It includes times for you to consider where you were, where you are now, and how you can further progress in the future. Most successful screenwriters at some point in the process take time to reflect, to evaluate how things went. Maybe their pitch, or maybe their writing, or maybe their revisions, or how they dealt with people and negotiated a deal. There's a lot of things that you need to learn and get good at to find success. And the people who move faster and who get where they want to go quicker are those who have focus. They are intentional. They are focused on outcomes. They commit to the time it's going to take them. They utilize resources they have at their disposal, and they spend some time self-reflecting on the whole thing. If you want to improve as a screenwriter, or again, for any craft, you have to learn to focus if you want to get there sooner than later. And yes, I have resources that are linked below. The Fast Track is one of them, and it is structured, focused learning. It's set up in a very specific way to help you maximize the time and focus and outcomes to learn. There are films to watch, scripts to read, lessons to watch, homework assignments, reflections along the way, plus feedback from me if you want it. Okay, if you want to utilize the resources, that's going to put you on the right path. It's going to put you on the fast track. It's a work at your own pace course, and you should focus and work through it intentionally with focus. I can't say it enough. With focus. And there's other links and resources below, so you can check those out if any of those are of interest to you. And of course, you can also watch this. If you found value, don't forget to like and subscribe so others can find the channel, and focus your learning. And when you tell a story that matters. See you later.